Hey, fourth graders, it's almost Easter, so I got my Easter bunny with me. Hope you guys are having a great day, and let's get started by taking a look at what's going on. Couple of things. Next week on Monday, I'll be posting new things for IXL for you, so just stay tuned for that. I'll post it right away Monday morning, and you can take a look at it from there. And you can message me if you need any review help or anything like that. I'll be happy to answer them. No video tomorrow. HOPPY Easter. So no video tomorrow. You have your stuff to work on, and you think you know what you need to do, and that's up to you and your parents whether you get Good Friday off or not, but take a look at those. Make sure you stop up, get those free lunches, free breakfasts at the high school. Take a look at those. Message or call me if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer those. So make sure you touch base with me, whether it's tomorrow or whatever. Feel free to touch base. I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have them. And make sure you guys are staying home, staying safe, all those important things. Okay? Taking a look at the academics part of it. Math, you have the stuff to work on. I posted earlier this week. Like I said, there'll be a new one next week on Monday. But make sure you take a look at Prodigy. 15, 20 minutes is great. Look at those IXL things. You can do those independently. Let me know if you have any problems with those. And there's still the Kahoot from Monday that I posted up there. If you haven't done yet, take a look at. Or I think you can play it again as well. So feel free to do it multiple times. Reading. Same thing. Make sure you're reading every day, 20, 30 minutes. Hopefully you still got books to read. Take a look through those or reread something. Make sure you're reading each day. IXL as well. So take a look at IXL. The standards are Miss Summerfeld's reading section on Dojo. So hopefully you guys saw the video yesterday. You guys sent in some excellent questions to Mandela Barnes. They recorded it last week. I finally got the link. Take a look at this. Answered a ton of questions. And so everybody that did post a question got their question answered. So take a look at that. Really cool video from Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, as well as his policy and legislative director, Winona Wolf, who happens to be Alex LeBont's aunt. So take a look at that video. It's really cool. And so take a look at that. There's an old picture from last year of me and Mandela Barnes. But take a look at that. I think it's really neat. And it's long. It's like 20 minutes. But he answered everybody's question, including a couple that I threw in there. And you guys asked really great questions. I did have a Socrative ad question up there. If you haven't answered that, take a look at that. And there was a Kahoot from earlier this week as well. Fayad, make sure you take a look at Mr. Buckley's posts in Dojo as well. Going on with City of Ember. All right, we're learning more about this clock tower here and this picture and more about these lights that are here. And Lena and Dune. I noticed he's holding a wrench. I didn't notice that before, but it makes sense knowing more about what we know about Dune. So, taking a look at those. Here's our map again, right? We learned a little bit more about this river that runs underneath the city. And we talked more about like the gathering hall, and here's the clock tower and all this stuff. And I think some things happened in Harkin Square. So the school's over here, so you kind of get an idea of the supply depot. So there's the different things. You can come back and cite this later if you need to see it. We left off here on chapter 3. We finished it. We learned a lot more about Dune and his family, that he lives with his dad, and had a rough first day. So now we're going to start off on chapter 4. Something lost, nothing found. One day, when Lena had been a messenger for several weeks, she came home to find that Granny had thrown all the cushions from the couch onto the floor, ripped up the corner of the couch's lining, and was pulling out wads of stuffing. "What are you doing?" Lena cried. Granny looked up. Wisps of sofa stuffing stuck in the front of her dress and clung to her hair. "Something is lost," she said. I think it might be in here." "What's lost, Granny?" "I don't quite recall," said the old woman. "Something important." "But Granny, you're ruining the couch. What will we sit on?" Granny tore a piece more of the covering of the couch and yanked out another puff of stuffing. "It doesn't matter," she said. I'll put it back together later. Let's put it back now, Lena said. I don't think what's lost is in there. You don't know, said Granny darkly, but she sat back on her heels, looking tired. Lena began cleaning up the mess. Where's the baby? She asked. Granny gazed at Lena blankly. The baby? You haven't forgotten the baby? Oh, yes, I think she's down in the shop. By herself? Lena stood up and ran down the stairs. She found Poppy sitting on the floor of the shop, enmeshed in a tangle of yellow yarn. As soon as she saw Lena, Poppy began to howl. Lena picked her up and unwound the yarn, talking soothingly, though she was so upset that her fingers trembled. For Granny to forget about the baby was dangerous. Poppy could fall downstairs or hurt herself. She could wander out onto the street and get lost. Granny had been forgetful lately, but this was the first time she'd completely forgot about Poppy. When they got upstairs, Granny was kneeling on the floor, gathering up some white tufts of stuffing and jamming them back into the hole that she'd made in the couch. It isn't in there, she said sadly. What wasn't? It was a long time ago, said Granny. My father told me about it. Lena sighed impatiently. More and more her grandmother's mind seemed to be caught in the past. She could explain the rules of Pebble Jacks, which she'd last played when she was 8, or tell you what happened at the singing when she was 12, or who'd she danced with at the Clothing Square dance when she was 16, but she'd forget what had happened the day before yesterday. They heard him talking about it when he died, she said to Lena. They heard who talking? My grandfather, the 7th mayor. And what did they hear him say? Ah, said her grandmother with a faraway look, that's the mystery. He said he couldn't get at it. Now it's lost, he said. But what was it? He didn't say. Lena gave up. It didn't matter anyway. Probably the lost thing was the old man's left sock, or the hairbrush. But for some reason the story had taken root in Granny's mind. The next morning, on her way to work, Lena stopped at the house of their neighbor, Evelyn Murdo. Miss Murdo was brisk in her manner and in her person thin and straight as a nail. But she was kind and in an unsmiling way. Until a few years ago, she'd run a shop that sold paper and pencils. But when the paper and pencils became scarce, her shop closed. Now she spent her days sitting by her upstairs window, watching people on the street with sharp eyes. Lena told Miss Murdo about her grandma's forgetfulness. Will you look in on her sometimes and make sure things are all right? She asked. I will, certainly, said Miss Murdo, nodding twice, firmly. Lena went away, feeling better. That day, Lena was given a message by Arbin Swin, who ran the Callaway Street Vegetable Market, to be delivered to Lena's friend Clary, the greenhouse manager. Lena was glad to carry the message, though her gladness was mixed a little with sadness. Her father had worked in the greenhouse. It still felt strange not to see him there. The 5 greenhouses produced all of Ember's fresh food. They were out past Greengate Square, at the furthest edge of the city. Nothing else was out there but trash heaps, great moldering, stinking hills that stood on rocky ground and were people lit by a few floodlights high up on poles. It used to be that no one went to the trash heaps but the trash collectors, who dumped the trash and left it. Now, then a couple of children might go there to play, scrambling up the side of the heaps and tumbling down. Lena and Lizzie used to go there when they were younger. They'd pull out the occasional treasure, some empty cans, maybe an old hat or a cracked plate. But not anymore. Now there were guards posted at the trash heaps to make sure no one poked around. Just recently, an official job called trash sifter had been created. Every day, a team of people methodically sorted through the trash heaps in search of anything that might be at all useful. They'd come back with broken chair legs that could be used for repair window frames, bent nails that could become hooks for clothes, even filthy rags stiff with dirt. It can be washed out and used as patch holes in window blinds or mattress covers. Lena hadn't thought about it before, but now she wondered about the trash sifters. Were they out there because Ember really was running out of everything? Beyond the trash heaps, there was nothing at all. That is, only the vast unknown regions, where the darkness was absolute. From the end of Dingery Street, Lena could see the long, low greenhouses. They looked as like big tin cans that had been cut in half and laid in their sides. Her breath came a little faster now. The greenhouses were a home to her, in a way. She knew that she would most likely to find Clary somewhere around the greenhouse one, where the office was. So that is where she headed first. A small tool shed stood beside the door of greenhouse one. Lena peeked into it and saw only rakes and shovels. She opened the greenhouse door. Warm, furry-smelling air washed over her, and all her love for this place came rushing back. Out of habit, she gazed up toward the ceiling, as she might see her father there on his ladder, tinkering with the sprinkler system, the temperature gauges, and the lights. The greenhouse light was whiter than the yellowish light of Ember Street lamps. It came from long tubes that ran the length of the ceiling. In this light, the leaves of the plants shone so green that almost hurt Lena's eyes. On the other days when she'd come here with her father, Lena had spent hours wandering along the gravel paths that ran between the vegetable beds, sniffing the leaves, poking her fingers into the dirt, and learning to tell the plants apart by their look and smell. There were beans and peas and curly tendrils and dark green spinach and ruffled lettuce and the hard, pale green cabbages, some of them as big as a newborn baby's head. What she loved best was to rub the leaves of the tomato plants between her fingers and breathe in their pungent, powdery smell. A long, straight path led from one end of the building to the other. About halfway down the path, Clary was crouching by a bed of carrots. Lena ran towards her, and Clary smiled, brushed the dirt from her hands, and stood up. Clary was tall and solid, with big hands and knobby knuckles. She had a square jaw and square shoulders, and brown hair that cut in short, squarish way. You might have thought from looking at her that she was gruff, unfriendly person, but her nature was just the opposite. She was more comfortable with the plants than with people, Lena's father had always said. She was strong but shy, a person of much knowledge but few words. Lena had always liked her. Even when she was little, Clary did not treat her like a baby, but gave her jobs to do, pulling up carrots, picking bugs off cabbages. Since her parents had died, Lena had come many times to talk with Clary, or just to work silently beside her. Clary was always kind to her, and working with the plants took Lena's mind off her grief. "Well," said Clary. She smiled at Lena, wiped her hands on her already grimy pants, and smiled some more. Finally, she said, "You're a messenger." "Yes," said Lena, "and I have a message for you. It's from Arbin Swin. Please add 4 extra crates to my order, 2 of potatoes and 2 of cabbages." Clary frowned. "I can't do that," she said. "At least I can send him the cabbages, but only 1 small crate of potatoes." "Why?" asked Lena. "Well, we sort of have a problem with the potatoes." "What is it?" asked Lena. Clary had a habit of answering questions in the briefest possible way. You had to keep asking and asking before she would believe you really wanted to know, and you weren't just being polite. Then she would explain, and you could see how much she knew and how much she loved her work. "I'll show you," she said. She led the way to the bed where green leaves were spotted with black. "A new disease. I haven't seen it before. When you dig up the potatoes, they're runny inside instead of hard, and they stink. I'm going to have to throw out the ones in the bed. There are only a few beds left that aren't infected." Most people in Ember had potatoes at every meal. Mashed, boiled, stewed, roasted. They'd had fried potatoes too, in the days before cooking oil ran out. I'd hate it if we couldn't have potatoes anymore, Lena said. I would too, said Clary. They sat at the edge of the potato bed and talked for a while, but Lena's grandmother and Lena's grandmother and the baby, about the trouble Clary was having with the beehives, and about the greenhouse sprinkler system. It hasn't worked right since. Clary hesitated and glanced sideways at Lena. For a long time, she said. She didn't want to say, since your father died. Lena understood that. She stood up. I should go, she said. I have to take Arben Swin the answer to his message. I hope you'll come again, said Clary. You can come whenever you can come any time. Lena said thank you and turned to go. But just outside the greenhouse door, she heard running footsteps and a strange, high sobbing sound. Or rather, she heard sobs and then a wail. Sobs, and then a shout, and then more sobs, getting louder. She looked back towards the rear of the greenhouse, towards the trash heaps. Clary, she called, there's something. Clary came out and listened too. Do you hear it? Yes, said Clary. She frowned. I'm afraid it's someone who... She peered towards the crying noise. Yes, here he comes. Her strong hand gripped Lena's shoulder for a moment. You'd better go, she said. I'll take care of this. But what is it? Never mind, just go. But Lena wanted to see. Once Clary had walked away, she ducked behind the tool shed. From there, she watched. The noise came closer, out of the trash heaps. A figure appeared. It was a man running and stumbling, his arms flopping. He looked as if he were about to fall over, as if he could hardly pick up his feet. In fact, as he came closer, he did fall. He tripped over a hose and crumpled to the ground as if his bones had dissolved. Clary swooped down and said something to him in a low voice, too low for Lena to hear. The man was panting. When he turned over and sat up, Lena saw that his face was scratched and his eyes wide open in fright. His sobs had turned into hiccups. She recognized him. It was Sag Merrill, one of the clerks from the supply depot. He was quiet, long-faced man who always looked worried. Clary helped him to his feet. The two of them came slowly toward the greenhouse. As they got closer, Lena could hear what the man was saying. He spoke very fast in a weak, trembly voice, hardly stopping for breath. Was sure I could do it. I said to myself, just one more step after another. That's all. One step after another. I knew it would be dark. Who doesn't know that? But I thought, well, dark can't hurt you. I'll just keep going. I thought... He stumbled and sagged against Clary. Careful, Clary said. She reached the door of the greenhouse, and Clary struggled to open it. Without thinking, Lena darted out from behind the tool shed and opened it for her. Clary shot her a frown, but said nothing. Sag didn't stop talking. But then, the further I went into the darker it was, and you can't just keep walking into the black, can you? It's like a wall in front of you. I kept turning around to look for the lights of the city, because that's all there was to see. And then I'd say to myself, don't look back, keep moving. But I kept tripping and falling. The ground is rough out there. I scraped my hands. He held up one hand and stared at the red scratches on it, which oozed drops of blood. They got him into Clary's office and sat him down in her chair. He rambled on. Be brave, I said to myself. I kept going. Be brave, I said to myself. I kept going and going. But then all of a sudden I thought, anything could be out there, here. There could be a pit of 1,000 feet deep right in front of me, and there could be something that bites. I've heard stories of rats as big as garbage bins, and I had to get out of there. So I turned around and I ran. Never mind, said Clary. You're all right now. Lena, get him some water. Lena found a cup and filled it from the sink in the corner. Sag took it with his shaking hand and drank it down. What were you looking for? Lena asked. She knew what she would have been looking for if she'd gone out there. She thought about it countless times. Sag stared at her. He seemed to have to puzzle over her question. Finally, he said, I was looking for something that could help us. What would it be? I don't know. Like a stairway that leads somewhere, maybe. Or a building full of, I don't know, useful things. But you didn't find anything or see anything, Lena asked, disappointed. Nothing. Nothing. There is nothing out there. His voice became like short and his eyes looked wild again. Or if there is, we could never get to it. Never. Not without a light. He took a long, shaky breath. For a while he stared at the floor. Then he stood up. I think I'm all right now. I'll be going. With uncertain steps, he went down the path and out the door. Well, said Clary, I'm sorry it happened while you were here. I was afraid you might be scared. That's why I told you to go. But Lena was full of questions, not fear. She had heard tales of people who tried to go into the unknown regions. She thought about it herself, in fact. She'd wandered the same things as Sag. She had imagined making her way out into the dark and coming to a wall, which she could find a door or a tunnel, and the end of that tunnel would be another city, the city of light that she had dreamed about. All it would take was the courage to walk away from Ember and into the darkness and then keep going. It might have been possible if you could carry a light to show the way, but in Ember there was no such thing as a light that could carry with you. Outside lights were fixed to the poles or to the roofs of houses. Inside lights were set to the ceilings or had cords. It had to be plugged in. Over the course of Ember's history, various clever people had tried to invent a movable light, but all of them had failed. One man had managed to ignite the end of a stick of wood by holding it against the electric burner of a stove. He'd run across the city with a flaming stick, planning to use it to light his journey, but by the time he got to the trash heaps, his torch had gone out. Other people latched onto his idea. One woman who lived on Deadlock Street, very near the edge of the city, managed to get into the unknown regions with her flaming stick, but the stick burned out quickly before she could go far. The flames singed her hands, and she threw it down. Everyone who tried to penetrate the unknown regions had come back within a few hours, their enterprise a failure. Lena and Clary stood by the open door of the greenhouse and watched Sag shuffle toward the city. As he neared the trash heaps, two guards who had been sitting on the ground got to their feet. They walked over to Sag, and each of them took out hold of his arms. Uh-oh, said Clary. Those guards are always looking for trouble. But Sag hasn't broken any law, said Lena. Doesn't matter. They need something to do. They'll get some fun out of scaring him. One of the guards was shaking his finger at Sag and saying something in a voice almost loud enough for Lena to hear. Poor man, said Clary with a sigh. He's the fourth one this year. The guards were marching Sag away now, and on either side of him, Sag looked limp and small between them. What do you think is out in the unknown regions, Clary? Clary stared down at the ground, where the light from the greenhouse was casting long, thin shadows of both of them. I don't know. Nothing, I guess. And do you think Ember is the only light in the dark world? Clary sighed. I don't know, she said. She gave Lena a long look. Her eyes, Lena thought, looked a little sad. They were a deep brown, almost the color of the earth in the garden bed. Clary put a hand in her pocket and drew something out. Look, she said, in a palm of her hand was a white bean. Something in this seed knows how to make a bean plant. How does it know that? I don't know, said Lena, staring at the hard, flat bean. It knows because it has life in it, said Clary. But where does the life come from? What is life? Lena could see now that the words were welling up in Clary now. Her eyes were bright and her cheeks were rosy. Take a lamp, for instance. When you plug it in, it comes alive and away. It lights up. That's because it's connected to a wire that's connected to the generator, which is making electricity. Though don't ask me how, but the bean seed isn't connected to anything. Neither are people. We don't have plugs and wires that connect us to the generators. What makes living things go is inside them somehow. Her dark eyebrows drew together and over her eyes. What I mean is, she said finally, something is going on that we don't understand. They, they say the builders made the city, but who made the builders and who made us? I think the answer must be somewhere outside of Ember. In the unknown regions? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. She brushed her hand together and to time in a time to get back to work way. Clary, said Lena quickly, here's what I think. Her heart sped up. She hadn't told this to anyone before. In my mind, I see another city. Lena watched to see if Clary was going to laugh at her or smile in the way that overly kind way. She didn't. So Lena went on. It isn't like Ember. It's white and gleaming. The buildings are tall and sort of sparkle. Everything is bright, not just the inside of the buildings, but all around them too, even up in the sky. I know it's just my imagination, but it feels real. I think it is real. Clary said, And then she said, where would such a city be? That's what I want to know. Or how to get to it. I think there's I keep thinking there's a door somewhere, maybe out in the unknown regions, a door that leads out of Ember. And then behind that door is a road. Cleary just shrugged her shoulders. I don't know, she said. I have to get back to work. But here, take this. She handed Lena a bean seed and took a little pot from a shelf, scooped dirt into it, and handed the pot to Lena too. Stick the bean in here and water it every day, she said. It looks like nothing, but little like a white stone, but inside there's life. That must be the sort of clue, don't you think? If we could just figure it out. Lena took the seed in the pot. Thank you, she said. She wanted to give Clary a hug, but didn't, in case it would embarrass her. Instead, she just said goodbye and raced back toward the city. Hey, that's the end of the chapter. We'll learn a lot more on Monday when we resume. Again, tomorrow I'll take off. I read a really long passage today so that you could take tomorrow off of the read aloud. But it's getting interesting, right? We've got the grandma who's looking for something. Maybe it relates back to that first chapter about the mayor that had a box. And we'll see, right? So the next chapter is chapter 5 on Night Street. I threw a couple pictures in here to cover up the words, but if you want to do some keynote stuff, feel free to, right? You guys know how to use the Instant Alpha tool to put yourself in. If you guys do decide to, send me a picture. I'd love to see it. And I hope you guys have a great day. Uh-oh, my rabbit fell over. There we go. I hope you guys have a great day. I hope you have a great Easter, a very hoppy Easter. And if you want to get hold of me, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you guys. I hope you have a great day and a great weekend. I look forward to hearing from you during our Google Hangout or during our, we'll do a Google Hangout 10 o'clock or some other time. Just let me know. Send me a message. If you guys do an Instant Alpha thing on Keynote, that'd be cool. And I'll touch base with you guys later. Have a great weekend.